Hey everybody, I want to tell you a little bit about your final reflection, action plan, and presentation of learning, which is the final wrap up for our Praxis project. So if you are on our As You Learn page, you can find, our Praxis project description, which included the initial reflection, your review of the literature, and your interview. And now you're going to bring it all together and tell me about what you learned and how you're going to put it into practice. The other place that you can find information, I need to link the schedule there, is right here in the last area of our As You Learn. You can find examples of final presentations and final projects, as well as our scoring guide. So today I just wanted to go through each part briefly, and then if you have questions or if you want to talk to me about your action plan ideas, please email me. We'll set up a time to meet, and I'm happy to meet with you. So your final reflection is a time for you to look back at your initial reflection, look back at some of your goals, and tell me about what you've learned. Here, you may find yourself using information that you shared in your literature review or in your interview. You're wanting to bring these things together. So this is your final synthesis of learning. It does not need to be super lengthy. You do need to include citational support for assertions. And if you look back at your literature review at my comments, if there were areas where I said, you should really look and find out the numbers behind this statement, do that. So, if your project is focused on parent involvement for Hmong students, for an example, you might say, the reason why this project is significant to me is because in my school, 20% of our students are Hmong. So include specific data that is relevant for you in your situation, as well as more, at the state level or at the national level. I want you to think about, what things that you learned. So this really is a time for you to reflect on your own learning and growth throughout this project. You can also talk about any challenges that you had. Obviously, we've all had challenges that are related to COVID-19, and you can speak to that if you want, but I guess I'm thinking about other types of things as well. All right, so that is the reflection part. So between your literature review and then your interview, you should have developed some ideas about things that you would like to implement. Those could be things you'd like to implement in your own classroom, or things that you'd like to implement more at your school level, or it could even be things that you want to implement in your own personal life. So think about those and come up with probably 3 is a good number, but if you really only have 2 good ideas, that's fine. Goals of things that you want to do, that you can do, that are based on the research that you conducted and that you want to try out in your own teaching context. I want you to delineate those goals, explain why they're important briefly, because you've already hopefully done that in your previous work. And then talk to me about what you're going to need and what materials you might use to implement those goals. This is where you're going to need to do a little extra legwork in order to flesh that out a bit. Some of those things you may have come across in your review of the literature, but you may need to look some more at how the principles or ideas that you read about in your review of the literature and that you talked about in your interview, how have other educators tried to address those. So you might look and see if you can find some resources that are helpful for you. You can also think about resources that you have currently at your school site. And remember that resources can be people as well as materials. And so make sure that your action plan is clearly connected to what you found throughout your research, and that you support your goals and your actions with the research that you did. So it needs to be research-based, it needs to be thoroughly connected. So here's a little example that I have here just on this slide. Obviously, I would have to develop it. But if my problem is that I see that bilingual children are losing their home language, and I know that bilingualism is beneficial for students with regards to cognitive, social, and emotional development, then that might be something I would want to address in my school setting. So up here is sort of my problem, my rationale, and I would need to explain these things a little bit and give supporting citations. And then my action plan. So here are some of my goals. For each of these goals, I would flesh them out a little bit and then discuss some ideas I have and some resources that I've found for helping me implement those. So that's the action plan. It really is like kind of laying out ideas for how you're going to implement what you've learned. And when you look at the examples that I posted in our As You Learn, I believe, let's see, I guess I just have this one, but I have seen people use different types of formats for their action plan. And this student kind of has it laid out with bullets, sort of like an outline. And I think that's great. If other people have done it a little more narratively, and if that's better for you, that's fine too. Let's see here. Let me get back. Try to be a little bit quick. Okay, so the final thing, or actually you're going to be doing your presentation of learning possibly before you finalize your action plan. It's really up to you, because the presentation of learning can be a time for you to share your ideas for your action plan and get some feedback from people. So you can think about that too. You're going to have 12 minutes maximum. If you're at 10 minutes, yay you. 12 minutes maximum to share your project. That way we can have a little bit of time for asking you questions and providing suggestions and feedback. So you're going to want to give us the highlights of your project. You're going to want to tell us a little bit about your learning journey, what you learned, and a little bit about your action plan. You may not have time to share every single one of your goals. Make sure that you use visuals or visual supports in your presentation, and don't overwhelm us with text. So remember that you can always elaborate on your words, but keep the text on the slide to a minimum. So that is that for my presentation for you. Please make sure that you look over our scoring guide for this final piece of our project, and that you look at the examples that I provided for you. And if you have any questions, again, email me, and I'll be happy to meet with you. Okay, thanks.